Hi everyone, welcome to Rendering Teardown section. My name's Simon, and today we're going to have a look at this interior rendering. So, as you can see, we're dealing with a double height space in some sort of really nice and interesting house. There are a couple of things that definitely are interesting in this image. Is the space itself is really there's a lot of potential for really good images, really good image. Well, we obviously have a really good base here, and also the kind of composition we have here is a good start. So we're actually going to start with the composition. The first thing, I guess, is that we do have an interesting ratio of the image, since we're dealing with a square, which is not the most usual framing or ratio you would use. And the thing is, and that makes it a little bit maybe not the most relevant here, is that we're dealing, as I said in introduction, with a double height. And the thing is, the best way to emphasize a double height is to have a vertical framing, so that you actually get a better understanding of how high the space is compared to how wide it is. So what I would do, I think, is to try to get vertical framing. The second thing as well is that in terms of the way the composition is made, is that this sort of main vertical here is actually almost right in the middle of the image, which is not really what you want. You either want to it's not a main problem, but still it's a little bit unbalanced, I'd say. So what I would do is try to either be closer from this place and emphasize the interior, or closer from this space and emphasize the window. What we can do with the present file is to actually try to maybe, we're gonna give it a little bit more height, try to be in something. In terms of ratio here, it's a good thing to have the third of your image somewhere along the horizontal line here. Second thing is to try to get this main vertical on a third of your image. The thing is, you could actually do it this way as well. It just depends on what you're looking for. Basically, this is two completely different images. Here you have something that is turned on the inside, which is quite interesting. And you have the woman here looking towards the interior of the image and towards the interior of the building or the house. The thing is, if you do it this way, you have you focus on the fact that you have a strong wait, I went a little bit too far here. It could be something like that, like that, like that. Yeah. If you do it that way, you would focus on the windows and thus have something more open on the outside, which is quite interesting as well. I can't really choose, but I think the problem is that if you keep it this way, you actually do both. And the thing is, you cannot really show two different ideas that are main ideas in a single image, because, or at least you cannot do it in a framing like that. It would be more interesting to sit right in the middle, in between the interior and the exterior, or something like that. So, well, I guess that's the thing for the framing itself. The other thing, if you choose to go for something that is looking towards the outside, is just to be careful that your girl here is not looking towards the outside of your image. So basically she would have to be flipped and looking that way. Basically the idea is that if your framing is this way and someone is sitting at the side, you don't want him or her to look outside of your image but inside of your image. So that's the idea. Another thing beside that is to be a little bit wary of the distortion. Here you can see we do have something that is a little bit too distorted. It's not too, like it's quite subtle, but still I think we're using quite a wide lens here, which is not something that you usually do in interior renderings. The other main thing basically I think is regarding the balance again between the outside and the inside. What I mean by that is that here you can see we have all the artificial lighting, which is, well, interesting. The thing is, you can see outside that we're in broad daylight and the sky is kind of blue, and well, basically we should have like a lot of light coming inside of the house, and that's not the case. So that's something kind of weird, especially since you're having a double height here. So when you're selling a space, saying you have double height, but still you're going to use spotlight in broad daylight, it's not something that is really selling. So what you want to do is either use a night sky outside and keep your artificial lighting on and show that you have some sort of interesting scenography and lighting effects and stuff like that, which can be interesting. Or the other thing is you turn all these things off and you emphasize the outside by actually letting the light inside of your image, inside of the house, so that you get nice cast shadows and like a more natural and warm feel than what you would have with artificial lighting. So that's the second main thing. Couple of details now. The one that is always like that sort of strike my mind is the horizon line. This is basically, well, the horizon line, and especially horizon line in the reflection. What you really want to do is to always have some sort of a background image or bushes or hedges or whatever that prevents you from having this really sharp line here, because it obviously doesn't look real. And the thing is, you also have to be careful when you're using, like when you have reflection, to have something reflected. And be careful as well when you're using like Forest Pack Pro to scatter elements, is that if they're behind your camera or not in the angle, basically if you have your camera and you're looking like that, you're gonna have stuff scattered here. But if you have a reflection here that shows what's happening there, your Forest Pack by default is not gonna scatter elements behind you. So you have to be careful that it actually does. So it's something you have to check in your camera settings. I guess it works the same for other scattering program or plugins. Regarding other details, I quite like I think the framing and the detailing of the frame is not too bad. The thing is, I think it could be a little bit more interesting on the balustrade here, so you can try to actually model the glass frame and to actually have like the slight edges here, so that you get the thickness of the glass. The other thing regarding as well the framing that I was referring to before is to actually use this ceiling light as some sort of a centerpiece that you sort of put in the, not in the middle, but like use as a composition center of focus. And two other things really quickly regarding the texturing as well is that the floor here, you can see with the reflection that it's a little bit too perfect. Like you have to have some sort of a roughness, like it's a little bit too homogeneous. So yeah, what you want is to have some sort of a differentiation between the boards and stuff like that. And finally, but depending on the framing you're gonna opt for, you still have some sort of like there's something that is a little bit like, once you look at it a little bit too much, you can see that this couch here is the same as this one, because you can see that all the pillows here are the same as these ones. So what you want to do is that even though it's not that obvious, you want to at least maybe take one of the cushion away, maybe change the pattern or the cloth on this one, or maybe do something like at least differentiate them. Regarding a little bit quickly of black and white, you can see that the image lacks a little bit of a contrast. The thing is, it especially lacks contrast if you think you're gonna do like artificial lighting, because the artificial lighting creates really like much stronger contrast, because well, the light, instead of traveling and be diffused around the whole room, is only going to be like locally diffused by like a really tiny source. So it's going to be, you're going to have many more dark areas. So basically it means you're going to have like more contrast in your image. So that would be something more like that. You're going to have a little bit of fun around with the burn and dodge. Basically the burn tool is going to be useful if you want to create some sort of differentiation in the texture and things like that. And the dodge tool can be interesting if you want to sort of create some sort of bloom effect in on your spotlights here. Here I'm using like a simple, like it's the dodge tool with a simple brush like that, but you could try to use like IES light or stuff like, yeah, like IES light brush or something similar, say something like that. Could be quite fun. The idea behind that is to still be quite subtle, because otherwise it looks really fake, but that's the idea. I think that's pretty much it. The other and final thing I guess I'm gonna cover is the idea of, here you can see the saturation. Basically, I'm gonna have a look at it like that, it's actually not looking too bad if we don't take into account the outside, which is not like how it's supposed to look. The actual inside is interesting in terms of saturation, because as you may know, and as you should know now, is that the artificial lighting creates stronger contrast and also stronger saturation. So that means that here you can see everything is quite saturated, but it's actually how it's supposed to be, because the artificial lighting enhance saturation. That's quite accurate as how it's supposed to look. I think I'm gonna finish there. Hopefully you've learned interesting tips and tricks for your next rendering. And I didn't choose the final framing here, but as I said in the introduction, it's really like a matter of what you want to show. But basically the main idea here is to sort of have some sort of consistency between what you're trying to show, like the kind of space you're trying to show and the kind of framing you're using. Like you won't do a landscape with a vertical framing, and you won't do like a tower with an horizontal framing. It wouldn't work as well as it would with the appropriate framing. So yeah, thanks guys, and see you in the next Teardown. Bye.
New